What is the best 80s sci-fi book for you? Well, I want to help you find it. Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan and welcome to Words in Time. Now in today's video, I want to show some love for 1980s sci-fi. And why the 80s in particular? If you watched my video on classic sci-fi, you'll know that for me, the 1980s was a decade that helped transition science fiction from classic to modern. And I think what the sci-fi writers of the 80s were able to do was expand on the social and cultural explorations of the new wave sci-fi writers of the 60s and 70s, as well as take emerging technologies of the digital age and extrapolate on them in order to imagine and create new technologies. And as the secret source of Storycraft astutely commented, they were able to take those new technologies and also explore the implications of those new technologies for society. So I put together a collection of 6 sci-fi books from the 1980s, and I've broken them down either by subgenre or aspects that I think are going to appeal to different readers. So let's get into my recommendations. Up first, and this is for anyone that enjoys time travel stories, we have 1986's Replay by Ken Grimwood. So the premise for this one is that our main character, Jeff, dies at the age of 43, then wakes up again at the age of 18. So it asks the question, what would you do if you were given a second chance at life? Then a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and so on. So the reason why I really enjoy this one is because it has a kind of cool Back to the Future / Groundhog Day type feel to it. And it takes one big kind of overarching sci-fi concept and then uses that to explore a lot of really deeply personal and relatable themes. I think the character work in this book was quite strong, and I really liked kind of putting myself in the interesting situation that Jeff was in and asking myself what I would do if I was Jeff, if I was put in this kind of crazy situation. So I really liked how it kind of used the sci-fi concept to explore personal questions while also having this kind of mystery always hanging in the background. Why is Jeff in this time loop and will he ever get out of it? Moving on, this one is for fans of space operas. We have 1988's The Player of Games by Ian M. Banks. So the premise for The Player of Games is that our main character, Gergely, is a master of every board game and computer game, and he gets invited to the Empire of Azad to compete in a complex tournament where the winner becomes emperor. So the first thing that I noticed about The Player of Games was that it has a very rich and deep world, and that's because this book is a part of the Culture series. The Culture series is comprised of 10 books, 9 novels, and 1 short story collection, but they can all be read as standalones, and I think The Player of Games is a great place to start. So in The Player of Games, we have some kind of familiar space opera aspects, some really cool things to do with space travel and technology, artificial intelligence, and then we have this really interesting game that Gergely competes in. But what surprised me about this book was how heavy and hard-hitting some of the themes could be at times. The way this book explores things like violence and the way we consume media and how we entertain ourselves to be really, really thought-provoking. So if you're looking for a space opera with some cool sci-fi concepts, some fun characters, but also hits on a few dark themes, then I definitely think The Player of Games could be for you. With my third recommendation, I have one for readers looking for hard sci-fi, and that is Dragon's Egg by Robert L. Forward. So what is the premise for this one? Well, on a neutron star with a surface gravity 67 billion times that of Earth, a plant-like organism starts to evolve into an intelligent species known as the Chela. And while this species is evolving, human astronomers detect this neutron star and set out on an expedition to explore it. So I would recommend this book to anybody that read Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which is one of my favorite sci-fi books of all time, and thought to themselves, yeah, that was pretty good, but it needed more science. Yeah, you did a pretty good job there, Tchaikovsky, but did you include a technical appendix? All right, that could have used some more graphs and tables, thank you very much. This is probably the hardest sci-fi book I've ever read, and while it did get a tad dry for me at times, I did want a little bit more plot progression, I thought it really paid off in the end. I think it's a really interesting concept, seeing this species evolve under such conditions that are just so foreign from my experience here on Earth. I found it to be really, really thought-provoking, and some of the concepts were pretty mind-blowing. If this sounds good to you, I know half of you have clicked off the video already, but the half of you that are still here, I think you're really gonna dig Dragon's Egg by Robert L. Forward. Alright, softening the sci-fi a little bit, this next recommendation is for readers that enjoy character-driven stories. And that is 1985's Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. So the premise for this one is that in the future, Earth is at war with an insect-like alien species. And fearing an invasion, the International Fleet recruits children in order to train them to be commanders at battle school. So in Ender's Game, we have a couple of familiar tropes, including a training school setting, as well as some gifted / overly intelligent children, which I know is a trope that doesn't always appeal to everyone, but I think what makes them work in Ender's Game, there's a couple of reasons, but first is the characters are incredibly well written. Whether it's our main character, Ender Wiggin, or some of his battle school teammates like Shadow / Bean, or his brother and sister, Peter and Valentine. They're such fully fleshed out characters, and it's really interesting to kind of go on this journey with them and see their personalities develop and see how they react to the situations that they're put in. The way that Orson Scott Card tests them, the story moves at a really quick pace, and the character development I found to be really, really rewarding. And something that really impressed me was that often when you have stories involving younger characters, there's a clear message that they're supposed to take away from certain situations, and depending on which character it was in Ender's Game, what they got or what they learned from certain situations that they were put in was not what I was expecting. It wasn't what I would have taken away from that experience. And so I think those kind of surprises is what helped make the characters in Ender's Game feel really, really real to me. Another thing that I love about Ender's Game is how much it is able to pack into just around 300 pages. It has some really cool sci-fi concepts, a really fast-paced plot, some really rich and rewarding themes. It gets quite philosophical at times, and possibly my favorite ending to a sci-fi book. I can't recommend this one highly enough. I think it would appeal to a lot of sci-fi readers. I think you should definitely check out Ender's Game. Okay, with my second last recommendation, we have one for fans of Cyberpunk, and that is 1984's Neuromancer by William Gibson. So the premise for Neuromancer is that we follow a washed-up data thief that gets hired for one last job that will bring him up against a powerful artificial intelligence. Neuromancer is arguably the definitive cyberpunk novel, and its influence you can see across so many different books and other forms of media within the sci-fi genre. It actually helped to popularize terms like cyberspace and the Matrix. I should let you know that this is a rather complex read. William Gibson gives you little to no hand-holding. This book drops you in a setting and just expects you to figure out what is going on. A lot of the terminology is not explained, there's not much exposition, you just have to kind of piece things together based on the context. Even as someone with quite a lot of science fiction reading under their belt, I still found this one to be quite confusing. Although I will say it's something that I've appreciated more and more over time. As I've done some more reading up on it, some more research, I have been able to piece some things together. It started to make more sense, and I think this is one that I would definitely enjoy doing a reread for. If you like the sound of a grimy mashup between a dystopian future and a cyberspace alternate reality, I think you'll find Neuromancer to be a pretty cool read. And finally, if you're looking for an epic series, I don't think you can go past 1989's Hyperion by Dan Simmons. So the premise for Hyperion is that 7 travelers are on a pilgrimage to the planet of Hyperion to visit the time tombs that are moving backwards in time and are guarded by the Shrike. So the Hyperion Cantos, comprised of 2 duologies, is only 4 books long. But when it comes to the scope of the world building and the scale of the sci-fi concepts, it doesn't get much more epic than Hyperion. Some people think Hyperion can be read as a standalone. Personally, I would commit to reading the first 2 books in order to complete the first story arc, and then if you're enjoying it, you can continue with the Endymion duology as well. I think the prose and character work might be some of the best in the genre, and the Hyperion universe might be my favorite universe in sci-fi. Whether I'm with the pilgrims in Hyperion or a group of travelers hopping across worlds in Endymion, this is just a world that I can see myself coming back to over and over and over again, and I hope you do too. So there you go, guys. Those are my 80s sci-fi recommendations. Let me know which you're interested in picking up, and let me know some of your 80s sci-fi favorites. I need your recommendations as well, because the TBR is never long enough. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and you can find more sci-fi content over here.